I'm about to speak to the Right Honourable Steve Barclay, MP, who is the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, the third most important man of the Treasury here in the UK. And I've never interviewed an MP before. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. He looks after many areas that is going to absolutely interest this community. He looks after women in the economy. He looks after skills, labour market policy, the childcare policy, including tax-free childcare, and he also worked on Brexit and then straight into COVID-19. So I, for one, know that this man is incredibly busy. We are honoured to have him for a full half an hour. We've had amazing questions from the community, and I cannot wait to interview him and really hear firsthand how the government is going to help support us into a brighter future.
Hi, I'm Steve Barclay. I'm Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Really looking forward to chatting to Holly on her Insta Live today and to hearing from small businesses up and down the country.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Holly. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, it's great to, and hi to everyone that's on the call.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, I'm going to jump right in if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I've got so many questions from this community. Rishi Sunak said in April that our smallest businesses are the backbone of our economy and just play such a vital role. And if we look at the start of this wonderful year that we were going to have, 2020, and all the prospects that we had, Britain had a majority UK government, Brexit outcomes were becoming clearer, and business confidence had begun to grow. And then COVID-19 hit. With what you know you're working on, and not to go into specifics, of course, but what you know you're working on, Steve, what's your gut feel for this famous 2020, and in particular, the stability and recovery of businesses?
Well, we know, Holly, it's tough. It's tough out there. We see that as ministers. We see it as constituency MPs. But at the same time, I'm really optimistic for the longer term, because many people on the call, they're running viable businesses, they're running good businesses. They were good businesses before COVID struck. Yeah. So these are good businesses that can bounce back once we deal with the health emergency that we face. So the whole strategy that the Chancellor has been following is to say, how do we accelerate that recovery? And as the Bank of England governor recognised, the things we've put in place, like the furlough, will allow the people on this call to get their businesses back, to keep that link between staff and the business so that those businesses can fire up as quickly as possible. So that's really the key. How do we avoid that permanent economic scarring that we would have otherwise? Keep people close to their business. I mean, anyone running a business will know the staff are always absolutely the key asset of any business. So keep that staff, keep that link, and then enable people to do what they do best, which is run their own business. You're right, small businesses, absolute backbone of the economy. Keep their staff and bounce back as quickly as possible.
What I would like to ask is, this community is basically thousands of small businesses that are creative. What are you going to do to support the creative industries?
Yeah, well, it is. Firstly, it's trying to help people navigate just the weeks ahead as it is. And that's why we've been trying to help with cash flow. So cash flow in any business is a big key issue. So whether that's time to pay on tax, whether that's deferrals, whether it was the grants linked to property, because property for many businesses is often one of the big costs. So the grants, and also part of that was operationally, how can we deliver quickly? Because also one of the challenges was, how do we get money to people quickly because they needed it as a matter of urgency. So using what was already out there through the property as a link, getting grants to businesses, the £10,000 grants, the £25,000 grants, flexibility on business rates, tax deferrals and so forth. But then, of course, the loans. And key, particularly for the small businesses, was, again, we've tweaked it as we've gone along. So we had the CBILS loan, and then one of the areas of feedback we had from yourself and from many small businesses was, the criteria for that, because these were loans up to 5 million. They weren't 100% guaranteed, 80% guaranteed, but we wanted to also protect the taxpayer. And again, a lot of small businesses were saying, but we need this quickly. So that's why the Chancellor put in place the bounce back loans. And I hope people on the call have been able to benefit from that. Certainly we've had good feedback just in terms of getting those quickly to those that need it.
What do you think that the government can do now to ensure the British independent high street thrives in post-COVID? And also, do you see the role, and especially if you think, built not on the high street, the retail sector in the post-COVID economy?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things within that, Holly. I think there's first looking at what are the changes that come through COVID. I mean, if you take within the health space, now GPs are treating 3/4 of their patients online as opposed to them coming in. And we'll see similar changes in retail, and you've been at the forefront of that in terms of the shift online. And I think we'll see more of that. And then there's the specific that government can do. So, for example, through Robert Jenrick and the local government department, the Towns Fund, looking at how the high street will change, probably be more about leisure, not just in terms of purchasing items. So it'd be more an experience perhaps, and looking at, from a government point of view, how we can support towns as they redesign, they redevelop, they repurpose for the future. So some of it's specific things we can announce and fund, but also some of it's looking at what are the trends so that we work with the direction of travel. I think there will be more shifting online, and it's a question then of how we support the industry as we move forward on that.
Is there a way that we as founders who have run businesses on the high street, have online experience, could actually help the government really come up with plans for the future high street? Because I think that if you can tap into our knowledge, I really think we could give you a huge amount of really raw information about what the future could hold.
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the things, particularly given my role on spending, is how we use data far better. And so, the insights you will have, other sort of business owners will have, in terms of what are the data trends, where do the public want to go, what is it we're picking up on. And I think hearing from yourself, hearing from people who are actually at the sharp end running businesses, who see where those trends are, allow government then to be much more nimble in how we design our support packages, but above all to shift from just announcing a package to what the outcome that is then delivering. Because I think quite often people get pretty frustrated hearing governments of whichever persuasion announcing £1 billion for this or £1 billion for that, and they're saying, but is it fixing my problem? Is it actually solving the thing that I really care about? And to what extent are you announcing something and then moving on in government? How are you actually following through and delivering? And
yet what I feel is, unless you have some of us who are entrepreneurs there with you, again, what you just said could happen again. So I would love to just put my hand up and say I can rally some people together and definitely help you. But back to some questions. I've got a question from Robert. Once the government's job retention scheme ends, many small businesses fear they will need to make drastic job cuts to enable their survival. What other stimulus to the economy will the government be making to kickstart the economy and prevent higher unemployment?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, on the scheme itself, we've extended it to October. That's 8 months.
Yep.
And it is, at the end of the day, this is taxpayers' money. It is expensive as a scheme, but we've extended there because we recognise the pressures are very material for many people on the call. More widely, one of the things we're doing is we're looking at which of our programmes have underspent because there's things that they couldn't continue this year, and which can we accelerate. So, for example, you saw the Prime Minister announce £2 billion for cycling and walking, and saying, look, as part of our recovery here, people want to be more healthy. We want to, we're constrained on public transport because of social distancing rules. So let's get some pop-up facilities on cycling. Let's stimulate that. But also to your point in terms of the business community having a voice and helping, it's partly why I really wanted to join you today, Holly, to hear from businesses. But also I think where it's really important is that cross-department view, because again, in government, quite often issues are looked at from a departmental point of view, whereas the business community will know, is it mental health? Is it transport? Is it about local government? And you're interacting with government in so many different ways. So actually that really sort of practical, solutions-based can-do approach is something we want to hear much more of in government.
Absolutely. And I will say that I'm encouraging anyone listening, and every single day, I encourage that also the power is in our hands. You know, as much as the government can help us as small businesses have to understand that we are the power that can get us out of this, and that we are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs have magic. And, you know, if we can actually use that entrepreneurial muscle, we can find a way with your support. And a question from Hattie McGill. She wants to talk about freelancers and self-employed people. And she comes from the film industry. So a lot of them are self-employed. Their film pay through PAYE. So none of them qualify for support. And if we weren't on the right contracts before Corona hit, they're not eligible for furlough. And actually I have a lot of friends I know in the film industry, and it's been quite devastating for them.
It has, and it's a fair point. And you know, I mean, I get a lot of feedback, you know, in terms of the constituency wide from people. And the challenge we've faced is we've tried to flex our schemes, so shifting the date to the day before the Chancellor announced it. So we did listen there. That brought in around 230,000 additional people, which was one of the changes we were able to make. You're right, some people, if they're on PAYE, can be included, even if they'd left their job, their old employer could take them back on, although not every previous employer would do so. So there are challenges around that. There are, at the same time, there is a requirement on me and other ministers to guard against fraud. And I absolutely appreciate, for those on the call who are legitimate people working and frustrated, and I recognise that, you know, that these people's families we're talking about. But at the same time, from a government point of view, you've got to design schemes that guard against the risk of fraud. And one of the best ways of doing that, and also delivering at speed. And if you think the furlough scheme's been delivered in 4 weeks, and that's the challenge. And it doesn't in any way negate the real, you know, concern that I hear from people such as freelancers, but it's a question of using the PAY system. You know, if people were self-employed, using the self-employed system, looking at what are the protections we can do for individuals, which is why we've done things like the minimum income floor on universal credit. So it's looking at the range of measures, but it's also about what you can deliver. I just
a note on that, just so you have it written down. Someone just commented that the film industry brings in more income than the manufacturing industry. So it is just an important, isn't it? An incredibly important industry. So
I'm just going to Harry Potter films. Yeah,
well, exactly. So I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna flag it up again there for you, just because there is so, you know, when you think about that against the manufacturing industry, that is a huge industry that we need to protect. One of your many responsibilities is women in the economy, and we work with NatWest. I help with the Rose Review, and some of those incredible findings, such as closing the gap between women and men launching businesses, could add an additional 250 billion into gross value add and the UK economy. It's equivalent to 4 years of economic growth. Yeah. Can you sum up what you are, as the man in charge of women, can you sum up what you're going to be doing to encourage more female entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm a dad of a 9-year-old daughter. So, you know, I think of it not as whether it's men or women, but as a dad, I want absolutely every opportunity for her. And also from a Treasury point of view, we want to unlock all our talent. So you're right, Alison Rose did the review in 2019, which you fed into and were involved in, Holly. For example, that's been taken forward on the Future Fund, making sure we're publishing all the data, because a big part of this is when you have clear data, what gets measured gets done. So ensuring we're having transparency around the data on it, ensuring people sign up to the code and follow those recommendations that Alison brought forward. But I think that's across all areas of talent, because as the Prime Minister has often said, you know, opportunity might not be equally spread, but talent is everywhere, is equally spread. So we've got to make sure we unlock that opportunity across the economy. The work Alison did is part of that. The Women in Finance work that the Treasury has led on is a key part as well. Jane Angadia, for example, has done some fantastic work in this space as well. So it is an important agenda, and it's one we're very much promoting.
Yeah, I agree with you what you're saying. It's everyone. Talent is everywhere. But, right now I want to represent women, and that change from, the 17% to, 15 to 17%, it's not enough. And actually right now it would massively help this country. So again, I'm just flagging it even more so. And for your daughter, the future, and certainly the entrepreneurial future, is, I feel, a very more female empowered area than it's ever been. And I only have to look at Not on the High Street and its success, that women have an ability to look at businesses and look at customers like never before. And I just want to highlight that. Another question from Starter Enterprise. What steps are the UK taking to address the gender pay gap?
So a big part of it is saying, what are the impediments? Is that, for example, has been just more modern in workforce practices. So I saw it, my wife works full time, but when after the children looking at roles, there's very little flexibility in many employers. And I think one of the positives that's come out of COVID is actually people have worked in different ways. They've seen them actually working from home, working flexible hours, working flexible days. People have still delivered. So I think part of it is saying, again, let's be outcomes based. What delivers from an outcomes point of view? And that includes different ways of working, different models of teams, and being much more flexible and innovative about that. And I think, there's massive scope for us to look at that, but it requires us to focus on the outputs and to work with business leaders such as yourself in taking that agenda forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. At Holly & Co, I've just announced the enrichment era, where we're going to shut our offices. We're going to now be an agile team. I've now created flexible hours around core hours where kids can be picked up and dropped off. And very much so, it is about the changes we as business leaders can make to support support our colleagues and our employees, but also the female employees. And I think potentially, Steve, you're right. If you can get that into law, I would say very much so that is going to be one of the hugest shifts that we might see for women in business. And it's something I'm going to be really interested in looking at the changes and what that makes. My final question to you is, what is your last piece of advice? So I've got all the stories with all the links to all the government and what they're going to be doing. But just from you personally, what pieces of advice or words of comfort could you share for small businesses right now?
Seen within the business community just such rapid innovation as people have adapted and done different things. So it's that innovation that will drive us as a country forward, get the economy backfiring on all cylinders. We've tried from a Treasury to create the structure through the furlough scheme and the self-employment scheme to enable that bounce back to happen quickly. But above all, what will drive it is the people on your call. It's the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the people that know their business, who will look at what the challenges and the opportunities are and will bounce back as a result. And I think we've seen that innovation through the COVID crisis. We're going to see it in the months ahead. That's what stands the business community in good stead, and that's what makes me optimistic for the future.
And from your personal point of view, Steve, you've probably been, correct me if I'm wrong, more entrepreneurial. The entrepreneurial spirit in government has probably been really at the forefront. And I've been saying to the small business community, you cannot be the same as you were before and move into the future thinking that that's okay. Do you think that the government has also become more entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I do, and I think some of the officials with the rice mill say, whether ministers are going to expect these timescales on a regular basis for different schemes. But let me give you an example, Holly. We were talking within the Treasury before the crisis around how we wanted to open a northern campus. So that we, as part of levelling up across the country, we shifted our focus outside of London and not be too London-centric. And one of the concerns that the teams would say to me was, well, will we get less contact with ministers? Does that affect our career if we're not in the office in London, in Whitehall? I mean, HMRC has 80% of its staff out of the office when it delivered the furlough scheme. So when it comes to the Northern Campus, comes to working flexibility in different ways, we've shown through COVID we can do that. So let's get on, accelerate those plans, get that Northern Campus up and running, and work in different ways.
Well, it's a great example, and I wish you everything, Steve. You know, I can only imagine, like anything, it's never perfect for everyone, but on behalf of myself and the small businesses, thank you for all you've done. Thank you for all you're doing right now and all you're working on.
Pleasure. Well, thanks, Holly. Thanks for inviting me on. Thanks to everyone on the call. And within the Treasury, we look forward to your businesses firing forward in the future and continuing to work with you.
Thanks so much, Steve. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Let's summarise what Steve said. Firstly, do you know how, it's not easy to get half an hour of someone like Steve's time. And that just, again, should absolutely show you that this small business community has, it was always incredibly important, but I think it's just gone to a completely another level. We need a strong economy for this, and we will bounce back. How do we avoid a permanent economic scarring? I thought that was very interesting. Make sure you're utilising everything that the government's offering right now. Remember, we will, as ever, we will story everything, but do go and have a look at those stories. All the links are there for you. Have you looked at them again, or did you look at them 6 weeks ago? Check them out again. COVID is changing everything. GPs treating 3/4 of their patients online, and we will see this shift in retail. High streets will be more about leisure, more about experience perhaps, and the government want to support this shift. What gets measured gets done. Isn't that clear? What gets measured gets done, which is why it's important to have ambitious targets for female founders and women in business. How can we become more modern in workplace practices? Governments are looking at ways to support flexible working. I'm going to be interested to see if this is going to be put in law about flexible working. Do you agree with me that that could possibly be one of the biggest shifts to seeing more female entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship? I don't know. Think about the side hustles that could be going on. The innovators, the entrepreneurs, that will be the challenges, and the opportunities will be held in their hands to help this economy bounce back. Thank you, NatWest. Thank you, Dell. Thank you, Royal Mail and 3. That was my first ever MP interview. Steve, what a lovely guy. And I'm hoping that they're going to take me up on my offer to help them with some practical, innovative, entrepreneurial, energy-fueled, passion-fueled, Holly Hurricane stuff. Lots of love to you all.